Hey everyone, welcome back to Take Flight Garage. This is going to be the last video installment of this series. This is just going to be a quick overview of finishing where we left off in the previous video with the wiring. This is how everything is set up here, and then towards the end of the video I'm going to give you my thoughts and sort of review the speed hook gauges. So this is how everything is set up temporarily. I found enough friction between the plugs to just stuff the wires in there. I had to make a couple extensions for the warning lights. That was all I really needed to do to retain the factory warning lights, but in doing so, it means I didn't have to cut any of the factory harness, so everything is completely intact and all of this is completely removable. But here you go. So now you can kind of get the full effect of how the gauges look on the startup sequence. The warning lights, that's the seatbelt light going off. The light that is still illuminated there in the center is the parking brake. I did my best to try to organize and keep everything as neat and as tidy as I could back there. It's a lot of stuff, but it is all, it's organized chaos, I promise. I did my best to keep it neat, but the important thing is that everything fits. So in this time period, I've just sort of put, almost 200 miles on the car now with the gauges being done, just to get some seat time with it and really get a feel for how they look and how they feel. And I got to be honest with you, I couldn't be more happier with the final result of how everything has turned out, how the gauges themselves perform. Overall, I tried to go for an OEM plus sort of look, and I think I've achieved that in keeping, the white numbers and the red needles there. Everything is in the same exact layout as it would have been from the factory. Just, the needles, the edge needles swing a different way. That's really it. But we've eliminated a lot of things and issues in deleting the original cluster. A lot of those grounds, relying on the 40-year-old PCB, 40-year-old wiring harnesses, 40-year-old sensors, and now we just have this clean, crisp sort of design that is as close as I could possibly get it to the factory script. And while you might not agree particularly with my design choices and my lighting, the whole purpose of this was to demonstrate that you could customize this to your specific taste. You could do amber lighting, anything to keep it looking closer to factory that you want. But I believe the real ethos of this whole project was to demonstrate that, as opposed to paying like whatever it is, $1,400 or $1,500 for an entirely brand new cluster, or paying $700 for a new speedometer or a tachometer, you could just do this setup and gain some benefit. As far as upgrading those sensors and having reliable information at your disposal, and not having to deal or mess with the flexible PCB or potential loose grounds, etc. And now with having as much of a spaghettification mess as it is back there, it is traceable and easily identifiable to if there's a problem, what the source of that problem might be. As well as now these are individual gauges with a warranty, so if anything fails here, I can just, instead of having to replace the entire cluster or go through and depin and try to delicately remove the original wiring, I can just simply remove each individual gauge and kind of go from there. My only gripes with this project, I would say, are those of my own. I think it would be much cleaner. It would have been a much better overall finished product if I was much better at sanding and painting the cluster. I would much prefer it to have been just like an injection molded part, or maybe something really nice, either maybe not necessarily machined out of stainless steel or aluminum, but just to have cover plates to just kind of hide some of the defects in the printing layer lines. So that's in the future. I can worry about that later. My main goal with this whole project was just sort of to demonstrate the functionality and the feasibility of this whole thing. So these gauges will physically fit in the space that's allocated. You can physically get them to work, albeit with a couple workarounds where needed. But yeah, the whole point of this is that it is doable and they work great. Now, as far as my opinions on the gauges themselves, much more accurate depiction of what's going on with the engine at all times. And I trust those numbers much more sincerely than I would have with the original cluster, just because you kind of never know. Even with replacing those sensors, you're still kind of relying on a 40-year-old design, versus these are new sensors. It's new insulated and sheathed wiring harness. you're tapping into a localized ground and not relying through a ground through either the ECU or wherever else it's coming from. The signals you can rely on. One other thing that I potentially would change as far as the gauges go, I would do the 8,000 RPM tachometer. The 6,000 is just a little bit too low. I myself didn't think it was going to be too big of a deal. It does max out at $6,000. I don't really want to be shifting past $6,000, but just for, I probably should have just done the 8,000 RPM needle. Other thing I would do here is the GPS speedometer. Just a little bit less of a headache to get to work. You will need to use a pull-up resistor, and even when you use the factory sending unit, it's still just a little bit, I don't want to say clunky. It is accurate, however, so it is dead on. But the GPS speedometer just would have been a much more simple and quicker install. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the gauges are perfect. I akin it to basically watching TV on a like 24-inch 720p TV, and now stepping up into a like 4K 75-inch OLED screen. My analogy there is to just reference the definition of the information that you're receiving. So before I'm sure if you drive a 944, you're familiar, you might see your temp gauge kind of move up and bounce, or your fuel gauge for certain will just kind of be moving up and around everywhere, bouncing. An indicator that I never knew is that the oil pressure just pegs at 5, won't go any higher than that. What I've discovered with this is that the oil pressure gets much higher than 5 bar, especially when the car is cold. So I rely more so now on my oil pressure coming down more than I do my temperature readings, because even if the car is up to temp, even if the coolant is up to temp, I'm noticing that the oil pressure can still be kind of high. And so that might akin for why these cars leak oil so much. It's because none of us realize how high the oil pressure is. So as far as the gauges themselves go, excellent build quality, excellent design team, excellent communication, excellent customer service, 10s across the board. Again, when you consider the price and the fact that replacement clusters are going to be around $1,500, then $800 or $900 for a full set of speed huts fiscally makes a bit more sense. So to end this video, let's recap. Let's revisit why we did this entire project in the first place. The blue lighting that I had installed is a bit of an homage to the first car, my 83. That was one of the first things that I did, was replace those gauges with 924S gauges and do the blue lighting back there, just because blue is my personal favorite color. That's why I maintain the blue lighting in this car. And after a couple of years, even though it's only been 2 years, those LEDs were beginning to fail, and I could only see half my cluster. And so I realized that blue was just a bit overwhelming in the later car design. Didn't really fit as well, didn't look as clean as I believe it could have. And with everything failing, I decided to upgrade to the speed huts. And I think it's a much, much better solution. The lighting is much less overwhelming at night, but I still get to keep the blue. It still looks fantastic. It's not super bright. It's not overwhelming. And we've eliminated now inaccurate or outdated designs for receiving information through the cluster. So all around, I see it as a series of wins. And of course, I'd be remiss if I left out the fact that digital odometer. We have a digital odometer now, which means you don't have to worry about the odometer gears, the plastic gear train in there breaking and having to get in there and replace all that stuff and risk damaging the speedometer anyways. So digital odometer is a huge plus in my opinion. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you missed the other videos in the series, I talk about everything that it's taken to design and assemble this whole thing and put it together. I go a little bit more in depth about the design process with the speed huts and just the whole process with that and some of your options there. And overall, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Just leave them in the comment section down below. And Speed Hut, if any of you guys are watching this again, awesome product, excellent product, 10s across the board. Customer service was great, fantastic, all that other kind of good stuff. So I can't sing your praises enough. In fact, I've had a lot of people ask me about this cluster and all that, and what it might take to replicate it. And so hopefully you guys can use these series of videos as a guide to help you along and go from there. So I think this is going to be the last video that I post on the whole process of installing these and making this whole idea work and come to reality. There is one video if you just want to see the video or just see the gauges at night and on the road and how they look. I've posted a video that's going to be separate from this whole series of videos, but that's out there just so that you can kind of get more of a feel for the gauges themselves. So yeah, with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.